Good evening, class. My name is Zaida Dominguez, and I'll be talking about what we can do as a society to prevent someone from becoming a violent offender. And to start off, I believe as a community, as a society, me as a student, I think the biggest thing is that we have to teach and make people aware that environment isn't the only factor into why people commit crimes. And I believe our biggest uh, downfall is that we downplay childhood experiences, and we downplay genetics. And I think if we made people more aware that genetics plays a big role in why people, offend. Oftentimes, we don't think about, you know, the brain development. Brain development is such a important thing, and that sometimes that it's kind of crazy, especially for me. I have taken so many sociology classes, and I can't believe that I really didn't pick up on genetics as a contributor. I was actually, when I was reading Beaver's take on sociologists and how they act and how they downplay genetics, and it's just very true. I have it ingrained in my head that our social environment, our parents, our school are like our primary socialization, and they shape and mold us to act the way we do and feel the way we do and all that stuff. So that's always been in my head that, oh, in our social environment, just our social aspect of life. But it's interesting to really read that, you know, let's say um, chapter 5, prenatal exposure to toxins or prenatal exposure to testosterone is uh, really, an actual thing. And I think if we made programs, let's say, for expecting mothers to kind of know, or to kind of uh, make it of importance to know that prenatal care is so important, especially when in the early stages of when the fetus is developing. You know, um, it was interesting to read about the prenatal exposure to testosterone. I had never heard about the disorder of that causes the overproduction of androgens, which is a male hormone. And this is the first time I read it, thanks to Beaver. But yeah, so it's interesting to read that how females sometimes have that uh, disorder, right? Which makes them really uh, over masculinized. Like they're, look more like they have more male tendencies than female tendencies, right? And oftentimes, like, sometimes we think, females that have male tendencies is because, oh, it's the way they're socialized by their parents. Not at all. They actually did studies, and in the reading how, the females um, would still gravitate to the boy toys even though the parents would, push them to go to the girl toys. And so, the interesting finding about, having that uh, COD disorder is that um, females that have, that male testosterone in them oftentimes feel less motherly, less empathetic, um, and they have more like aggressive traits, you know, and so that's where comes that antisocial behavior, and that's how females sometimes, uh, commit crimes because they have that genetic trait that is in the male, the aggressive trait, and so that's how they pick up on it. So I think if we had programs that kind of, made people aware that there is a disorder like that, then maybe we could see that, hey, you know what, it's not just the social environment. It could be a genetic trait that may have causes, female or male, to have committed a crime. And aside from other programs, uh, I believe a good program too that would really help us would be sorry, it would be a program to for parents who are becoming first-time parents or are going to be parents for again, you know, better ways to socialize their children in a way that doesn't it doesn't express like antisocial behaviors. Um, in the article in the about genetic effects on parental and maternal socialization on the twins, it was interesting to read about the gene environmental correlation, and I believe it is discussed in Beaver's also reading about the passive RGE, which is it happens as a result of the biological parent passing on um, a biological trait uh, along to the genotype and to the environment. No, sorry. It's a where the biological parent passes on the trait to the child and to the environment, right? And perfect example they use is when, you know, let's say a child is born into parents that show that aggressive and antisocial trait, and therefore the child is being raised in an abusive or neglectful environment, and therefore that child takes that trait with them into school, can potentially get into fights, um, you know, definitely express that antisocial trait throughout life, and therefore they commit, you know, crimes. So if we could figure out a way or a program or programs that uh, gave parents a better understanding of what it is to have good parenting skills, I think that would make a big difference to children growing up. Oftentimes, you know, when I read on the article, like oftentimes, you know, the twins felt disattached from their mom or disattached from their dad, or they felt that the mom was more involved with them or attached to them than the actual dad. And oftentimes, we do see that a lot, you know, that when you have a weak social bond, especially among your parents, you know, among the parents and the child, that that right there, they, you know, of course they're gonna wanna lash out in school or even befriend delinquent peers because they want to feel part of something, you know. And overall, I believe, you know, we should be um, just making people aware that there is a lot of factors in why people commit crimes, you know. And just like the TED Talk about the future of criminology, and it's like it made me question what am I teaching others? What are we teaching others as criminologists? And I think for me, it's like Brian said, we should aim to be more humane. We are all humans. We all go through things, you know. Uh, and I believe, you know, if we just made people more aware that genetic factors plays a big role, whether it be brain development or children being exposed to like uh, mom smoking at an early age or drinking, how that affects their brain development, how that affects them in school, um, just you know, the maybe delayed cognitive motor skills, you know, then as a result they do poorly in school, or just, you know, making people aware that um, that childhood, it has to start somewhere. It has to start earlier. It doesn't just start at one point in life. It has to start. It does start in childhood, you know, the experiences. And Moffitt explains that too in her article about the life course persistent offenders and the adolescent offenders, and you know that the LCPs, or the life course of persistent offenders, um, it starts in childhood. You know, that when people are, you know, when children are bullying other people or cheating, stealing, that those are all things that they take with them as they grow older, and that's why they become more chronic violent offenders. And I just, you know, as an overall, I really do believe we should really look into the way we teach about biology more. I feel like there should be more biology classes um, that explains that, hey, this can affect someone in the long run, and just being aware that, childhood does play a factor, and maybe implementing more programs. And I believe we would, I mean, I do believe we have programs now, but if we just implemented more about, like, the prenatal care, or programs to better programs for better parental socialization tactics, like, we would be doing a lot of good for a lot of us. And it would definitely just um, make us more aware, and we could help others.